Before I saw this movie, if you'd asked me to describe the classic Harley-Davidson motorbike rider, I probably would have said an old, overweight guy wearing too much black leather with a long grey beard protruding from his helmet. You know the one. But now? Well, now I also picture this.
It was a golden age for motorcycles.
This might just be the marketing push Harley-Davidson needed to convince the youth that they don't just make motorbikes for boomers, they make them for rebels. Bikeriders, written and directed by Jeff Nichols, delivers us the best motorbike movie since Easy Rider back in the 60s. It's based on a book of the same title by Danny Lyon. He was a photographer and author who followed a criminal motorbike gang around Chicago from 1963 to 67, taking photos and recording interviews with the gang members, documenting their story. He's played by Mike Feist, and his interview with one of the gang members' wives, Kathy, played by Jodie Comer, becomes the backdrop for the movie as she narrates us through the story, in a way that reminded me of Goodfellas and Wolf of Wall Street. Even the narrative itself felt reminiscent of a Scorsese movie, in the way that we see the gang thriving and rising to begin, and then we follow the steps that lead to their eventual demise. This movie doesn't feel like it's judging these characters one way or another. It doesn't glorify them for their criminal activity, but it also doesn't condemn or pigeonhole them either. It instead presents the truth, and we as an audience are able to make our own judgments. Much like the good journalism the script is based on, we get to see an unbiased portrayal of a bunch of misfits with untreated mental health issues, and, it's the 60s, so all mental health issues are untreated. They're all running away from something, and we get to see how running away from your problems just creates more problems. Our protagonist, Benny, played by Austin Butler, is no less tormented than the rest of them. There are these really picturesque scenes of him riding his motorbike through the Midwest, and from his character in particular, you get this sense that when he's on the road, he's at peace, and he yearns to find that same peace off the road, but that's when it gets a bit more tricky. I think if you cut out all of the shots of Austin Butler smoking a cigarette with that steely look in his eyes, the movie would be a good half an hour shorter. And actually, come to think of it, I don't think there's one scene of him, other than when he's riding a motorbike, where he's not smoking. But I don't know, maybe that was the 60s where everyone just treated cigarettes like oxygen. The performances are captivating across the board. There are no small roles in this movie. There are characters that only have a few lines, sure, but they all feel like fully fleshed out human beings with as much complexity and nuance as the main characters. Like, they're all interesting enough to be the protagonists of their own spin-off movie. I guess that's in large part because they're all based on real-life people, which does do a lot of the heavy lifting for the writers, but that's not to take away from the stellar performances that this all-star cast was able to deliver. However, if I could only award an Oscar to one of them, it would be Tom Hardy. He plays the leader of the Chicago Vandals motorbike gang and is incredible in this movie. I love seeing him in a role like this again. He does something that he's very good at. Something he did in Legend as Reggie Cray and in Lawless as Forrest Barrant, and that is to be the boss. He has this patriarch, alpha, head of the family energy that few actors can pull off. And he doesn't even have to do anything. He can just be sitting there and you know he's in charge. And according to Shia LaBeouf, that applies to him on and off camera.
Hardy's a bit of a gorilla on the set.
Tom Hardy.
Yeah. Well, he runs a set, he pee in the corners. It's his set. You know it when you get there.
But in Bikeriders, he doesn't just put on a one-dimensional tough guy act. In fact, his character has this high-pitched voice and trouble maintaining eye contact. He's kind of socially awkward, which makes him way more interesting than the cookie-cutter crime boss with heaps of bravado and no substance that we've all seen before. He shows you glimpses of that frightened little boy hiding within his tough exterior, and it feels like he's doing his very best to suppress that and hide his fear. It's exquisite. Well done, Tom Hardy. Mwah. Chef's kiss. Now, I clearly enjoyed the movie, but I do have some criticisms as well. The intro felt a bit rushed, like it was asking the audience to take some pretty big mental leaps, which didn't feel totally earned. For example, we get the cliche love at first sight moment.
That's when I saw him for the first time.
I'm Benny.
I have to admit, he took my breath away.
Which to me just feels like the writers going, okay, well, we've got about 5 minutes of screen time where we need to make these characters go from strangers to lovers, so let's just make them fall in love at first sight and, speed it all up. And then Austin Butler's character does something to woo Jodie Comer's character and I guess show his undying love for her, but in a way that would just make him a really creepy stalker on the neighborhood watch list if this was real life. And I guess it's partly because he looks like a Scandinavian god, so he can get away with it. And we kind of do buy it because he's Austin Butler, but upon reflection, it's just rushed and unrealistic. And there were times, especially during the narration, where I could clearly tell that Jodie Comer was putting on a fake American accent.
I don't know, like he's wild.
And I'm Australian, so if it bothered me, I can only imagine it's going to irritate some American audiences as well. And there were moments where her performance felt like this choreographed, pre-planned dance, a very expertly choreographed dance, but not spontaneous and in the moment like a great performance should be. But then there were other scenes where I wasn't thinking about her accent at all and she blew me away, so I guess I just found her a bit inconsistent. All in all, I love the aesthetic of this movie. It was a really captivating story and a fascinating window into the world of motorbike gangs. I'm going to give Bikeriders a 7.5 out of 10. So as well as movie reviews like this one, I also like to make more in-depth video essays about different films, which you can check out here. And if you don't want to miss my next video, then make sure you subscribe. I'll see you then.
It's still just gonna do what it's gonna do.